If you're like me, and you got no life and there's nowhere to go, then tune in to the Animation Truman Show. You'll be glad you did.
And of course, you will be so very, very, very glad that you tuned in to the Animation Truman Show tonight. Hey, Max Power. Welcome to the party. I saw the thing you posted on Discord. It's looking good. Coming along. So I have my tasty beverage in hand. And what are we going to do tonight? Well, there's a few items on the agenda. One thing I wanted to share would be the progress I made on the musical score of Salt and Light Webisode 4 today. If you recall, the first part of it was fairly bouncy and what we call Mickey Mousing a lot. Get the idea. So for the back half, once Tianara gets involved, I wanted to take a completely different approach, which you guys will find to be just that. It's very different, and boy, it was fun to do. Hey, Maria. So that's one thing. I'm going to kind of show you what's going on with that. Probably going to have a little bit more conversation about this, which I talked about yesterday, because I said I really wasn't. When I played around with a Futurama character, I like, this really isn't that fun. I don't know if I'm into that. Well, I have some further thoughts about that. I may be changing my mind. And then I also had a, and then we're gonna be getting around to some ink and paint and blah 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 on Golik, which I fixed his characterization issues that came up yesterday with some hard fought frame by frame animation, which is again turning out to be pretty fun. And then over here we've got edconversation01.veg, which is gonna give you guys a little taste, just a little taste. And that, as you know, is good news, everyone. And so with that, I will start tonight by saying, hello, friends, just like Darren T. would. And, Ed and I were testing the Zoom call, and so why don't we dive right in with a little taste of that conversation. Now, it isn't going to be, and I will post an announcement, but it's not going to be a pre-recorded conversation. Yes, it is going to be a music day to a degree. But it's not going to be a pre-recorded conversation with Ed. That will be live on Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which I think is 2 p.m. in Lisbon, Portugal. But it was funny because, Ed and I, we just kind of hit it off, and we were testing the Zoom call, and I was kind of helping him and his wife get some things dialed in because he's breaking in a new microphone for doing just this type of thing, interviews or whatever. And we wound up talking for an hour. In fact, I finally at the end, I'm like, Ed, I think we're squeezing everything out of the sponge here. We probably should wrap it up and save something for Saturday morning. So anyway, sorry that the webcam's not on. Let me see if I can fix that. Don't know if I can after I've already started here. So we will defer on that one for the moment. But yeah, here's a little taste for you guys. I'll give you a little snippet. I just did a real quick edit here this morning, or actually this afternoon.
Animators, they're 24 frames make a second. An animator has an illusion of real time. They don't work in real time. Therefore, animators really do not need to be trained as actors, but they do need to understand acting structure, acting theory, scene structure. And that's what I teach, and is that. It goes all the way back to Aristotle. With animation, you think first about physical movement. Actors are trained not to think about physical movement. If you think about physical movement when you're playing a scene, it's considered an acting error. When you're making an animation, when you're creating it, when you're writing one, putting it together, telling a story, your audience wants to look at every single sequence as a problem to be solved. And how is the character solving that particular problem in that particular moment? And so when you're animating and you want to give good performance, the challenge for me as an acting teacher is that animation, since Walt Disney's days, has been taught through a process of mentorship, and where you get experienced animators basically telling the new generation, this is how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you want a character to be really excited, do this with the eyebrows. You've heard this.
Well, I tell you, based on everything you're saying, the animator is a director. And that's actually what they're really trying to learn to be, is a director.
You're exactly right. And this is what all of your those were really animation directors, animator directors, the ones that did the Bugs Bunny and all of those guys. They gave birth to those characters and owned them, and they animated a character straight through, beginning to end. It was their character,
right?
And they got to be like they knew exactly what the character was going to do. And so what you're doing as an animator is you're really helping your character be a good actor. From the audience's perspective, Mickey Mouse is the actor, not Walt Disney. It's
now you're almost suggesting there's sort of this intermediate step then between I as the animator have this role of the director, but then really what I'm doing is I'm portraying the character as an actor. You're almost putting an intermediate step between the performance of a character that I'm becoming emotionally on board with and my role as a director. You're saying the audience is aware of that middle step where the character is actually an actor.
Yeah. In order to really understand this, I don't think that there's enough focus on the relationship between the animator and the audience. Animators tend to get really involved with the technical aspects of animating and to make a character seem to come alive. And I agree, it's almost a magic trick. I stand in awe of some of the animators that I've worked with. I just am in awe of what they can do. But there's not enough focus on the aesthetic between an audience. And in order to get it, you have to go back to the live theater.
And there we cut it off. So anyway, that's, like I said, that's a little bit of a taste. Just amazing to, kind of have this new friend that's on a first name basis with, all these people at Disney and Pixar, and a lot of fun. So anyway, yeah, it was cool to talk to Ed, and like I said, it was supposed to be a 2-minute thing. We're just going to make sure the connection works, and we wind up jabbering back and forth for an hour. I think it's going to be fun. And I think it's going to maybe shed some light on kind of how we as animators should think about what we're trying to do. Now, I have an advantage. Ed and I talked about this a little bit, is that as a guy who's basically pretty mediocre as an animator, it is going to be a live stream max. Yes. This was just when we were testing the Zoom call connection today. I just went ahead and rolled the recording, and we wound up talking because I needed to test that we were going to be able to have a conversation and have it streamed through to YouTube at the same time. Seamlessly, right? And but yeah, I have an advantage in that, having directed a number of films and not necessarily being the most talented animator on the block. I think of what I'm doing as a director or as an editor. I'm really thinking about the storytelling more than the mechanics, let's say, of animation. So my hope, of course, is that I don't totally suck at it, but at the same time, everything for me has to serve the story and the attempt at either drama or comedy or whatever it is I'm trying to achieve. So anyway, right now I'm on the other screen. I'm popping up Vegas so I can load up the episode 2 of the show. And meantime, I guess we'll come back here. Now this, like I said, this is going to be quite different. I don't think, not different in the sense that it snaps you out stylistically, because I don't think it does, but I definitely wanted I wanted an approach to the Carliana Tianara stuff that had maybe less overt chord changes, which really just means not much changes in the bass. You know, if you're dancing on C sharp minor, which I was, there's a lot of movement in the music, but it's stays closer to its home base, whereas what we see here in the more Mickey Mousing approach, I would call a little more frenetic. As you can see there is a sense of tempo. And see, I love that. This is to me the coolest thing, when you're taking the theme of the show, which we've heard a zillion times at this point, right? You're getting sick of it. And how can we, when you think about composing, more and more, the more I'm doing this stuff, the more I see that it's really the orchestrator is the hero of scoring. Because usually the melodic and harmonic information, in other words, the song that underlies the score, is usually very, very simple. I mean, that there's maybe 8 chord changes, right? So anyway, let's plow along with this, and I'll kind of show you guys what I did. I'll jump ahead here, because this is kind of conversation between Mel and Asher, and obviously the voices aren't in there. I was thinking about maybe doing voices tonight, actually, here live on YouTube, and I may get to that. See how I'm kind of playing around with that theme and giving it little changes. Now this change back here was a little more extreme. But anyway, okay, so this is the stuff that's new, and it was really fun, because it only took, the whole thing took like a half an hour, this entire sequence. So I'm either getting better at it, or I don't realize how much it sucks. I don't know. So I actually blocked it in initially with just some piano right here, just so I had something to bounce against, you might say. So that's an interesting case in this part, in that even though there's a little bit of Mickey Mousey action right there with Tianara, I decided I don't want to punctuate it, because the point here has to do with the sucky situation she's in, and that they're going to try to marry her off against her will. Now there's like a little bit of a lift now, because it's the thing with the bird, right? Hey, Amar. And Max, and Mikhail, and Sifter. Darren. Nagut. Kind of wistful, kind of sad, right? But a bit of a bright moment. back to a little Mickey Mousing there because we're back to Monkey and Mel, but I still wanted to keep it wistful. I'm chewing on my olive, by the way, people.
This is
Okay, so
Dave,
now there's
aka
the,
BlendedPlanet.
That's the outro bit that happens at the end. So, I mean, for me, honestly, just sitting and listening to this type of music, for me, is I love this type of music. Yeah, it's very reminiscent of the Romantic period, late 1800s. You were hearing more dissonance come into music, sort of a move away from Beethoven. Kind of started it in the 1700s. So you don't have quite the well, I see a real progression from Bach to Mozart to Beethoven to the Romantic period, and then obviously into the 20th century you have dissonance really pretty much taking the forefront, and frankly that's where classical music becomes no longer popular because people can't relate to that amount of dissonance, right? They just can't. So but yeah, I gotta say, I definitely want to keep doing more and more of this, and I'm really happy to report that it's going quicker and quicker. I'd love to be able to just crank out an episode, you know, every Tchaikovsky? Oh. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, because I am not a Tchaikovsky fan. I do not like the Nutcracker at all. So I'm probably in the minority that way. But I'm just going to let this ramble along a bit. And as I said, maybe I'll go ahead and get up here and start doing voices tonight. We'll see. I'm just kind of making this up as we go along. See, I like that melodic, that part where we let the dissonance take a breather and just let melody happen again, kind of thing. Right there, you hear that harp glissando? I mean, this was like literally that transition is so valuable, and yet you think about it, and it's funny because I was listening to Danny Elfman today. I was listening to the soundtrack of Dr. Dolittle, okay? And I have to say, there was definitely some Alice in Wonderland that seemed to be sneaking in to the Dolittle music, but I'm guessing that maybe Dolittle was a Tim Burton film. I don't know. Elfman seems to always score Burton films, but you know, you would hear little things like this that are so simple. You know, actually what I did was I took the palm of my hand and I just went up the black keys, and then I said, well, okay, if that was in a major scale, that would be F sharp, so let's just lower it a whole step, and you know, I just digitally transposed it. Like I took a hold of this, you know, you just double click it, select all, and then do a quick transposition. So I just moved the whole thing down a whole step, and now it's in the key of E, and you got this, just this beautiful transition that's so, it's, you know, you could say it's cheap, you know, it's so cheap to do. It took literally 1 second, and yet little things like that, that's what I want to get good at. I want to get good at using texture and timbre as well as melody and chords to support the emotion of the story. That's really all I want to do in scoring. So the Mickey Mousing thing, like you saw right there with the nut, when the nut drops, I went ahead and brought back in some pizzicato. Right? And if it's too punctuated and it loses a sense of song, it loses a sense of a beat and a rhythm, then people don't actually have much tolerance for it. Which means if you suck at Mickey Mousing, people do not respond well to it. It's very, very negative. I say that from experience from scoring a film extremely badly about 12 years ago. And, here I may have taken the dissonance a little too far. There's a couple notes in the clarinet that I think maybe are working against me a bit. Is it the clarinet? I don't think it is the clarinet. There is no clarinet here. Where's the clarinet? There's the clarinet. But the idea here was, this is actually more of a, who is it? Benny, what was Benny's name? He did all the Hitchcock films, but he tend to have these little motifs that would repeat. So here what you've got is, if I solo this, I did this. I just wanted to put this drone of sort of an ominous feeling, and I didn't want it to change, right? I don't want to move the music around. I just want it to be. But then once you slap the Frenchies over top of that, and then the strings, which are quite simple, you put it all together, and it's like you get this wonderful dissonance. And again, I don't know how good I am at it, I just try to, what I'm trying to do is get better at really tuning into how the story makes me feel and trying to reproduce the emotional part with music. Like I said, I don't think I'm that great at it or anything. But I want to be. It's like there's a lift there a little bit because you're kind of on Tianara, and then this guy shows up. And then I figured I'd resolve it. I resolved it to an E chord, because the whole score is in the key of E or C sharp minor, depending how you want to look at it. Oh, but Tchaikovsky's ever so much more than that. I know, but every time I give Tchaikovsky a chance, Maria, it's just me, it's like my sense of comedy is kind of unusual. It just doesn't. I've never heard anything from Tchaikovsky that floated my boat. Maybe I'll go back and give it another try. Out of respect for you, I should probably give Tchaikovsky another chance. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan. Another guy I'm definitely not a fan of at all is Ravel. It has baffled me, especially if you think about what is his most popular piece. It's the one that goes on for like 12 minutes, and it's just the same thing over and over and over, but with slight variations in the orchestration. Bolero. Bolero, to me, is a monstrosity. Now, I say that as a guy who essentially did the same thing right here, not comparing myself to Ravel here, people, okay? So don't get me wrong. But in using this sort of repeating motif with the brass and the timpani together is kind of the same thing that I'm criticizing in Bolero. So I guess, it's easy to criticize someone else's sins and then go and commit the same ones yourself. So, but I don't know. I hope you guys like that, because it really is a lot of fun for me. I think I've always joked that I started making movies, 12 years ago, whatever it was, 15 years ago, in order to give myself an excuse to score films. And there really is a lot of truth to that, actually. Isn't that terrible? But it is true. Okay, so let's switch. Bolero by Ravel. Yep. Okay, let's switch back to Futurama. I'll let this spin around a couple times. Okay, so we had a little discussion on Discord, so this will be replay for some of you guys like Darren and Tom, if Tom's here. I don't know if Tom's here, but this is the thing. I did this, and I actually did this on my laptop, okay? So I did it with a traditional tablet, not my tablet screen. And I didn't even realize it, but the whole time I was doing it, the screen was reversed. So I actually drew this. But the point for me was this. when you go back and look at what I struggled with, frankly, a little bit last night, working on this shot, and I talked a bit about the tug of war that is always present between using digital tools to try to get some leverage and reuse of assets and things like that, versus just saying, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to use frame-by-frame animation and do the best job I can. And maybe if I'm really good at it, I'll be able to do it fast enough that it's not, doesn't feel punitive, right, to take the time to ink the same frame twice, even though it's almost the same drawing. Or, you know what I mean? It's the tweens that take up all the time. Now, in this case, what I did was I went to this drawing because I knew that for the smaller drawings, I could just shrink it. You just take this and shrink it down, right? To make my life a little easier, I also put the ink and paint on its own level, because that, again, makes it easier. I can make a copy of this frame, bring it up to here, shrink it down, and I've still got the pencil test overlaid over top of it. Okay, but the debate about digital tools versus just frame-by-frame animation has been a perennial one ever since I've been, doing the YouTube thing, and increasingly, and for me, I see it in the music as well. I mean, again, this is an important, to me, it's really significant. You guys probably wouldn't care. You're like, why are you fixated on this, Dave? But for me, the fact that this was all done in half an hour really makes me happy, right? Because I really I don't want to look back. I want to just look at the task at hand and bring forth, if I can, the most authentic representation of what I am freaking capable of today. And sometimes it's good enough and sometimes it's not good enough, but I want to do the best I can. And if I miss it, and if it's wrong, or it's not good enough, which you guys have seen a million times because how many shots have I redone in this show? But that's if giving you guys a little glimpse into my soul, what I'm trying to achieve here as a writer, as an animator, and as a composer. Those are the three main things. That the fundamental skill is typing. You have to know about story and structure and character development and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you're sitting there typing, right? So when you're typing, are you creating something that's either maybe worthy or contributes something, makes a material contribution to something greater than itself that's cool, that people can enjoy, that you can sell, quite frankly. So you're either typing or you're drawing or you're plunking on a piano, man. That's what you do. That's where your days and your minutes and your hours go if you want to create animated entertainment. It is what it is. And I don't ever want to decry the idea of being part of a team, because a lot of people, that's a good path. We are social animals, and if you can find a team and put together a team, either as a collaborative venture or by hiring people or whatever it is, then more power to you. For me, what I'm trying to do in my life is just get good at and enjoy. Both are important. I want to be good at it, but I want to enjoy it too. How can I take typing, plunking on a piano, and just drawing, those fundamental skills, and get to the point where I can, in the perfect world, as fast as I can think it, get an idea out there and express it in a way that is, worth looking at or worth listening to. That's all I'm trying to do. That's it. That's the whole thing. And the better I can get at not holding it precious, this, if I had done this part today, I'll bet you this part would have been done it wouldn't have been a half an hour, but it might have been an hour. Because I'm getting, it isn't about the mechanical skills of understanding how music works or, harmony or scoring. It's not that. It is not that. It's the emotional thing of trusting yourself enough to say, well, you know what, this is what feels good to me, so I'm going to go with it, right? And I think this is the tightrope that we walk as creators, is on the one hand, you do need to give some credence to the mores or the quality standards of whatever it is you're trying to do. You have to get your craft up to scratch for sure. And we're all works in progress. But at the same time, you have to trust yourself and go for it and not be afraid to just do it, leave it behind, and then if you want to come back to it the next day and find out, that wasn't quite what I thought it was. Maybe I need to redo that. That's okay too. Make all the mistakes in the world. It's okay. The truth of the matter is no one else cares, right? There's no one in your life that cares about what you're trying to do creatively like you do. And there never will be. So, that comes back to the idea that to a degree this is a solitary pursuit. But it doesn't have to be. For some people, it's like Maria with her theater group. That's a collaborative thing, and it's a beautiful thing. It's awesome to be able to share that experience with other people who have their own set of skills, and now you're bouncing and riffing off of each other. So I don't want to put that whole thing down because it is a beautiful thing. I thoroughly enjoyed the couple years I spent, gigging in a band. I played lead guitar and lead vocals in a classic rock band, and I'm thinking about actually going back to it. But anyway, so what does that have to do with Futurama? Well, yesterday I said I think this stemmed from trying to draw, say Professor Farnsworth or whatever, and it just he wasn't on character. It's like I missed. I did my best, and it wasn't good enough, and I knew it wasn't good enough, and I'm like, well, I don't want to spend any more time on this right now. But this was a significant thing for me to look in the mirror and say, okay, dude, you just did this, you just tried it, and it really was not fun. But is that because it sucked and I'm judging myself fairly? I'm judging myself fairly because it did suck. But am I feeling bad about it because it sucked? Or am I feeling bad about it because objectively I really did not enjoy the process for one reason or another? So today I allowed myself to do another test. This time was a bender. To be fair, I'll say that I don't have any better chance of doing a good job drawing Bender than I do of drawing Farnsworth. One's not easier or harder than the other. So it's just what I decide to do. So let's do Bender. And then what I realized is, okay, I was wrong. I think I was wrong yesterday. This could be fun. This could work. So, what does Futurama consist of? Well, the basic deal is, and I'll leave it to you guys to look it up on YouTube, but because a couple of the guys posted links in Discord, there's a very, very compelling and insightful, in the sense of what you get out of it, animatic on YouTube that's an entire Futurama episode. It's Futurama something 3000. So it's almost like a pilot episode in the sense that it recaps the whole story of how Fry went back in time and blah, blah, blah. And the first part of it, he bumps into Bender, and then they're getting to know each other. So it's clearly eerie. It's clearly early in the mythology. Okay. But that animatic gives you a lot of insight about their workflow, about like what exactly did they actually do. And what they did, it's pretty obvious to me, is, having gotten the script together, what they're doing is they're drawing things like this. They're drawing this. Okay, now Creed is going to be stupid. Okay. This, probably this, and then that's just an eye blink. So basically, what do you have here? You've got 1, 2, 3 poses. Now, this is interesting to me because it goes back to what I talked about yesterday, in the sense of my general proclivity, and I think my talent is more for straight ahead animation, because I have a good feeling for how to just go straight ahead and impart some sort of feeling of life to the motion, right? Well, the problem with that for me, though, the flip side of that, is that I have an equally strong, if not stronger, proclivity to push the characters off character. So in other words, I drew Golic incorrectly here, and this is not that because I redo it. but I drew him incorrectly. And even if I had drawn him correctly, what would have happened is the motion would have felt pretty good. But by the time I got to some point, I know, because I've done it a million times, I'm going to go, wait a second, this is no longer looking like Golic. It's starting to look like somebody else. Okay, I'm sure a lot of people have that issue with animation. It's something everybody has to learn how to do, is how to keep your characters on character. Again, guys, I think I sucked at it. Okay, I do my best, but basically, there it is. But getting back to Futurama, what I think that the bones of the show in terms of animation are this: 1, 2, 3. That's it. You've got these static poses where somebody, I'm just switching pencils here, by the way, where they're blocking it in, and then this is the stuff that's done in Korea. Rough Draft Studios would have done these tweens where you get from here to here. So what does that look like? Well, if you turn on the onion skins, you can kind of see it probably. Okay. So it's not particularly hard. The key thing here that makes it different from a show like Salt and Light, or frankly a lot of anime, is that, setting aside the fact that a lot of anime drifts on their frames per second, like 80% of the show will be 8 frames per second, but they'll have a lot of money shots that are 12 or even 24 frames per second. But setting that aside, the general aesthetic and approach in anime is not only 8 frames per second, but it's also animate as little as possible and use, noisy, effecty kind of background movement, and digital tricks to get more mileage out of actually very, very simple static drawings. Futurama is a completely different thing to me. Futurama is, you're taking the whole thing, and based on probably the soundtrack, because you're going to do typically the soundtrack first, which in my case I did, right? Because I recorded the episode I wrote. So you're going to have these static images, and then your job as an animator, if you watch Futurama, you'll see this is the case. You have a lot of static drawings just like anime, but when things move, they move pretty smoothly. They really do. And it's because they're doing that at 12 frames per second. And so you get something that's not terribly unlike what we have here. When I watch this, it feels like Futurama to me in terms of how it's moving. Okay, so I'm like, okay, that's great. I've got that solved. I know what I need to do if I want it to actually look like the show. Now the problem is, you need to do the ink and paint. I probably should do the ink and paint on this particular shot just to sort of prove to myself and maybe you guys that I can actually match the aesthetic. But my argument would be that honestly, you'd have to screw up pretty bad for that to happen. Because in this case, it's truly just a matter of tracing it. Really. It could be, I don't know this to be the case, but it could be with a show like Futurama that we don't really have a poly arc tool here in Krita, but let's just say, let's snap this down to 3 pixels. It could be that we're probably going to need to go for a really sharp sort of approach to inking. So you might be using the Bezier tool, for example, something like that, just to get that really, really crisp look. And that would be okay. I mean, you could do that. Because you just can't really get an arc like that with a pencil. I mean, even if you put smoothing on, you're not going to get that really crisp line and curvature that's so well controlled, right? So I can't remember if there's any curvature to Bender's torso, so I'll just assume there isn't at the moment. But so an approach to the inking like this is probably worth considering. And again, I'm not saying I'm going to do this, but it does seem to be a bit of a shame to, write an entire episode and be able to do the voices and all that, and then not do something with it. I mean, that's the basic thing that's egging me on in this case. It's like, it just really seems like a shame not to get in there and do something with it, right? So that's pretty much what that probably wants to look like. And then, of course, Bender's got his little door. And this is, you know, you could get lost in this, man. Turn on some nice music and just use the Bezier tool for a couple hours, right? Then maybe go back to the plain old brush here and there. But okay, so I'm going to take half a second here and Creed is acting silly. Take half a second and look at the comments. But I just don't think it's going to be that hard to match the visual aesthetic of the show, right? So what's the problem? What's the holdup? It'd really be two things, I think. And one would be the backgrounds, because you really do need to do some construction in 3D if you're going to pull it off. Now, I sorry to bore those of you who kind of like already know this or aren't interested, but let me go back here, because I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. So here we've got the lounge. Yeah, see, so here you've got the actual lounge from the show that I created in 3D a long time ago. I mean, I'm just kind of remembering here. It seems to me that this took, you know, it might have taken an hour, I mean, to model it. It just really didn't take very long. And then you're just using a toon renderer. And then in my case, for reasons I won't bore you with, I use the UV editing to actually map the colors. So the reason everything has individual colors, even though they're not colored here, is because these are all UV mapped to an image that's just a screenshot from the actual show. Make sense? So, and I don't know what we have here in terms of something's animated. I guess the camera moves, so if we go to the camera, I'll bet you that's a... No, that's actually one of the items. I must have been doing some little goofy animation test. But anyway, the long story short is that to reproduce the interiors really shouldn't be that difficult. You know, this needs a little more detail to get it up to where it needs to be, but you know, what's so hard about it, right? That looks very time consuming using the Bezier tools. Well, it is time consuming, but here's the thing, Max. Let's just say let's take a different approach. Okay, let's say we're going to use let's use this pen. We'll set this to probably 4 pixels, and then we'll turn on smoothing or stabilizing, right? Okay, so I'm going to flip the screen, and then let's just say, okay, we're going to do Bender's arm here. Okay, no matter how hard I try, I submit that at least I don't have a steady enough hand. If I do it really fast, maybe. But then you also have all this stuff, which brings, you know, everything about any challenge or any thing you're trying to do is going to present its own set of problems. Okay, so in this case, I would say that there's a strong case to be made with Bender in particular to maybe do him in 3D, but oops, that wasn't supposed to happen. Maybe do him in 3D, but definitely do his arms in 3D. Because this is actually wrong. I can see just looking at it, I can tell viscerally that it's wrong. Because this is really supposed to be more like that. His arms have a consistent thickness to them, right? So, you know, there's stuff like that, but at the same time, it seems to me you're gonna, you know, again, just thinking out loud here, it seems to me that whatever you're gonna bump into pretty quickly, because the very first shot you do, you're gonna wind up being subpar, like the quality's just not there, and then you have to figure out, well, okay, what went wrong? What did I do wrong here? You know. Another thing is with anything that's a matte groaning kind of thing, you really, like right now I'm hitting shift. And now one good thing in Krita is you can then hit alt, and then you can actually move the shape to where you want it to be. So in this case, I'd probably do that. Oop, that's a boo-boo. We want this to be filled. I guess in this case, what we want to do, well, you could not fill it at all. I guess that would be the thing to do at the moment. But so you go shift to make it a circle, and then alt, while holding down shift, by the way, to right. Well, you're not going to do that. You're not going to freehand that. You're not going to freehand Bender's eyes. There's no way. There's no way. You can't do that. Right? So yeah, it's a lot of work. But, what in animation isn't a lot of work? Am I right? So there I just followed that up. But I don't have it in front of me, so I don't have a reference to know. I think I made that probably too thick, actually. So I'm just going to erase that. But I'm just thinking about it, what it would take. Okay? So let's leave that behind for the moment and jump back over to Tahoma. Okay. So we got this picture go like, what happens if we hit insert? Ooh, that's interesting. So I go over to the level strip and I hit insert, and look what happened. That's what happens when you hit insert. You blow up the program. Didn't see that coming. Animation is an ongoing learning process. Boy, isn't that the truth? You learn a lot about yourself as you learn. You're so right. I mean, I've every day I learn something about. Let's see. So I'm going to hit insert again and see if it blows up again. It didn't. Okay. So so this is one of hey Darren, since you're here, can I ask you? I believe you told us one time there's a way to insert a completely blank drawing, but it inserts it after. Like if I hit insert right now, it's going to stick it above. What's the hotkey or whatever to create a blank drawing that's afterwards? You thought, I don't think, what are you talking about, Futurama? No, I don't think Futurama was done in Flash. I know that actually Toons, the predecessor to OpenToons, was used for some stuff. I don't know how they did the 3D. It's probably Maya or 3ds Max or something, but no, I think the actual animation was done with probably some flavor of Toon Boom, but I could be wrong about that. Which, of course, that's a vector program too. So I'm selecting the blank space down here and hitting insert. That doesn't do me any good. If I hit insert here, it's going to stick it above. If I hit Control X, it will ripple edit. But yeah, I thought there was a right click on the last drawing and choose insert after. So you got to use the paste insert. Where is insert after? Cells? Where the heck is that? Insert after. You tend to only use a timeline. Okay. Well, and that's true. I mean, frankly, it doesn't matter where I start drawing. Like if I start drawing on frame 1, it's still going to insert the drawing at the end. So it's all good, friends. It's all good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and insert that drawing in there, as a matter of fact. I'm also going to hit insert here to stick in an extra level, because for reasons I won't get into right now, I'm thinking that might be useful and or important. So what I'm going to do in this case is just copy that and then go back to here and hit the S key and hit Control V. And then before it goes too much further, what I want to do is get this kind of sort of where it needs to be. I'm hitting Shift and Alt so that it expands him from the center. Okay, so as you can see, basically that works. Now, we could talk about whether his eyes should be looking down. I don't think that matters. The thing I'm concerned about right now is characterization. So I'm going to turn off the pencil test and look at this. This is what I'm wondering is, are my ink lines bold enough given that I'm shrinking this down and they're being scaled down a little bit? I would say we're probably okay. I would say we're probably okay on this one. Alright, so then this interesting. Why is Tahoma? Oh, it's because I'm in render mode, stupid. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so let's just keep going here. Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a duplicate of this. And I am going to bake the changes into it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'll worry about changing his eye direction, lip sync, whatever. That all comes later. All I want to do right now is just get the final inked and painted rendering of Golik in place so that it basically works. And then I'll modify it from there. So in this case, let's turn this off. I want to look at his... Okay, so that movement in his head was actually a mistake. So as far as the leverage I'm getting out of this sequence, that's it. That's all I get. Okay? So let's see that one more time. Bloom. Okay, I guess I was wrong. I'm going to say I was wrong. I don't like the popping up. But on that last frame, I am going to... I have to think in reverse here. Like if I make a duplicate here, I could, you know, obviously rotate it. But I think what I'll do... That's held. The hands move just a tiny, tiny bit. So I think we're going to be doing some hard cutting and pasting. So I guess what I'll do is I'll dupe that, and then I'll dupe that. Like I said, what you have to do with stuff like this is you sort of have to think in reverse. No biggie. And then dupe that. And I'm just going to move it a little bit more. So again, his eyes shouldn't be looking in that direction. But I think we basically have it dialed in. Okay, so now, maybe because of creating the extra images or whatever, something went haywire. Why is that? Why is that so blown up? I do not have the animate tool involved here. That's kind of weird, guys. What the heck? That seems like a bug to me. So I am going to save all and close and reopen Tahoma, because I think what we're seeing here is just some software strangeness. And 9 times out of 10 with Tahoma, if you kill it and restart it, things just work. Yeah, it was Tunes the Pro version, 97. That sounds right. Yep. Yep. So, oh yeah, Max. I'll say I'm gonna go ahead and take a minute now and look at the comments. Well, Okay, so Max says with the brush tool you don't have to make it perfectly clean and smooth. When I was commenting on that, Max, what I was commenting on is I'm commenting viscerally based on an assessment that is mostly about comparing it to what I expect to see based on the real show. Okay? And based on the real show, Bender's, you can tell sometimes Bender's arms are done in 3D and sometimes they're done by hand. It actually is, it depends. Okay? But my general feeling would be that you would not want to religiously do them in 3D because that would actually look wrong because there's a lot of hand-drawn arms for Bender. But in terms of characterization, a bunch of variation in the thickness of that pipe, no, that's not acceptable because that would break the standard of the show. Now, you could go through episodes and find examples where they messed it up too, I'm sure, if you look real hard. But yeah, see what happened, guys? I was right. Yep, it was all just Tahoma acting stupid. Or was it? Yeah, it was. So there's the jump. And then right here what we have, guys, I don't have a Liquify tool, obviously, in Tahoma. So what I did was I said, okay, let's just use the selection tool, cut the guy up, move things around as we need to, and then we'll just fix it. So I'm going to hit the G key and then the V key. So I'm using the Smart Raster Paint tool, which is set to areas at this point, and I'm just going to patch the holes, basically. Just patch it. You know, no big deal. This takes, 10 seconds. So is it worth taking that 10 seconds in order to not completely re-ink him? Probably. There's a case to be made for re-inking as well, of course. Aesthetically, in terms of how it makes the movement look. But at least on this show, you're not going to talk me into doing it, probably. Alright, so let's go here. It looks to me like we've got a little bit of an eyebrow color we need to factor in right here. Yeah, that'll work. Cool beans. Wasn't sure if that was going to work, but yeah. Eyebrow color, beard color, same thing. So I'm just using the freehand mode of the fill tool in order to clean up that ugliness. We'll see if it does as good of a job on the wider shots. It looks like it is, so good deal. But yeah, getting back to the whole thing of just, what are you trying to do? Like, what are you trying to be good at, right? For me, I'm trying to get good at writing, animating, and scoring. And obviously voices, obviously sound effects, post-production, editing. It's all important, right? But the core skill is to write, draw, play. Write, draw, play. What are you going to do today, Timmy? Write, draw, play. Okay, so I'm going to turn this level off. Oh, okay, his eyes were already done. And I couldn't see it because I'm a fool. A fool, I say. Okay, so here we do see the degradation that occurred because of the scaling. Does it matter? Well, we don't know until we turn this off. It might. Well, no, probably not. Thought maybe it did, but I don't think so. No, looks fine. That's fine. Sheesh, what am I worried about? Okay, back to work. You zoom in real close, you can get a little spooked. A little spooked, my friends. Okay, so let's jump down to here. And now what we're going to do is we got to get the animation done here. Meaning okay, so I'm using my Tighten Up brush. Probably a worthy distinction to point out is that normally if I am doing a pencil test, I'm doing that sort of fast methodology I've showed you guys where I'm sketching with the I need to hit the B key. So I'm sketching with the this brush, and then when I've drawn what I want, I hit the 3 key so it actually switches brushes, and I ink it like right now. Okay? With this shot of Golic, that's not what I'm doing, because I'm putting it on another layer. I'm not using the ink to ink it. I'm actually using the Tighten Up brush, which is basically a My Paint pencil. If you look real close, you can see it's a little more pencil-y. Well, why are you doing it that way, David? 'Cause I want to. That's why. Ain't no other reason. Doing it 'cause I want to. Gonna do what I want. Can't tell me. Can't tell me. Can't tell me what I can do. I can do what I want. And so it is. I should do what I want today. Which is to use a brush that looks more like a pencil. So, those of you who object to it can write a letter to your Aunt Ida in Idaho, expressing your dismay at that brush that guy on YouTube's using. Okay, so I'm not going to put in his pupils at this point. I'm going to just get the basic ink and paint happening, and then we'll see what needs to be fixed or tweaked. I'm also going to zoom out a little bit. And in half a second, I'll see if there's anything compelling or interesting on the... Whoops, that sucked. Didn't it? Didn't it, people? Absolutely it did. You can't be afraid to call it what it is when you suck. Now, sometimes I say I suck when what I mean is that thing that I just tried to do, I didn't execute as well as I should have or could have. So I use the term suck fairly loosely. But the salient point is, I don't ever want to hold my ego so precious that I can't admit, when I suck. Boom. Okay, so we got that. Okay, so I said I was going to look at the comments. Guarantee me too. Those new... Okay. Let's go back. I'm going to go ahead and zip through the list. First season of Futurama made with pencil and paper. Yes, the early stuff, of course, was done on paper and scanned. I think when Toons was used, that's what it was used for. It was used for cleaning up the scanned pencil lines. Animation is an ongoing learning process. Okay, yeah, I already went over that comment from Maria. Thought it was done in Flash. Pretty sure it wasn't. The insert thing, and then Nagut says, the more you realize the more you realize you have so much to learn. Spoken like a true Brit. Good man, good man. Right click on the last drawing and choose insert after. Oh, you're talking about on the timeline. I don't think it matters, because if you're going to do it on the timeline or on the X sheet, then, what's it matter? Just go to where you want to go and either start drawing or hit D if you're making a duplicate. So, bottom line is, order of images in a level strip, sometimes it is a big deal and sometimes it's not. It obviously can be a very big deal if you're dealing with rasters, because those are independent images on the hard drive, and if they get out of order by inserting an image in between, you're going to break your past work. If anybody doesn't know what I mean by that and cares, you can feel free to ask in the comments. Otherwise, I'll assume you guys know what I'm talking about and or don't care. Okay, so here's an example where are we going to use digital tools or are we going to do it the other way? Well, here's what I'm going to do. First of all, I'm going to try to fix this. But then, a good way to handle something like this is make a selection. Watch this, people. Go Control-C, Control-V, and then just move it down like that. And then if you really want to be really fancy, you could hit your eraser and put it in segment mode and go like this. Look at that. Isn't that sweet? I don't use segment mode. There's why I don't use segment mode. Because if it's a close call, it gets it pretty badly wrong, like often. So I don't really use the segment eraser too much. It's bit me in the hiney too many times, friends. And my hiney can't take it no more. Okay, so that probably was like hopelessly bad. Yeah, okay, sorry. It's a straight line across. So what I'm going to do is go like, well, do it a couple times. That's pretty good. Yes, there we go. Well, this is a good example of somebody that's actually being paid to sit there and do ink and paint on a show. You know, they don't care about it. They're just doing a job kind of thing. They would probably tend to use techniques like this more often, where you just draw the line straight across. It just matters that it's in the right place, you know? And then use the eraser to clean it up. Well, let's pull back out here just a little bit. So did you guys all get to hear my little preview of the Ed Hooks interview? Probably most of you didn't, but I zoomed Ed today just to test the Zoom connection, right? And man, we wound up talking for an hour. An hour, I say. I think it's going to be pretty fun. But yeah, I really, when Ed and I talked this morning, actually, there were we talked about a few things about his experiences that are kind of personal stories involving the team at Pixar and or the team at Disney, and it's not really stuff I can play here on YouTube, but definitely interesting to pick his brain. And whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Is it Control? I think it's Shift Alt R. Come on now. Shift Alt R. Yeah, that's my hotkey for resetting the rotation. I should probably, this is a case where, yes, oh my gosh, no doubt about it. This is a case where a little bit of onion skins, just to stay on track with some of where these contours go, not the worst idea I've ever had. Well, what I was trying to say is, you could probably, I bet there's a lot of stories that a guy like Ed could tell of his experiences dealing with the teams there at Pixar and Disney. So I don't know. I'm not sure why those stories would happen. I assume that after his work with Pacific Data Images on ants, I'm guessing he probably got called in maybe as a consultant or something, maybe. Because I know he was relating conversations he had with the Pixar guys when they were making movies like Up and others. Other movies too. Control C, Control V. Smack that right up there. Okay, let's turn the skins back on. Okay, so I'm just trying to get the vibe of these contours that I have to move around. Where do, like how bendy are they? How pointy? This is where I have a tendency to go off character if I'm not careful. So here, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go like this and grab this, because this is such a long line. It's like you're never going to draw it twice the same way. So why not just paste it in there and then move the darn thing? Yeah. That makes a little more sense there, Dave. A little more sense. Boom. Foom, 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 foom. Erase. Okay. Let's pull back out a bit. Trying to let this wrinkle sort of crumple up a little bit as he's moving to the stage left. I think I went too far though. I did too much. Boom, boom, boom. Flatten that one out a little bit. Boom. Yep, that'll work. That'll work, my friends. And okay, so probably the same thing here, methinks. Just grab this, Control C, S key, Control V, and now we're gonna hit Shift Alt and blow that up just a little bit. Now I'm gonna use Control. That's not gonna work. I was hoping. This is where Liquify in Krita works kind of a lot better. But in this case, we're probably going to be okay. In fact, I know what I can do. Bear with me, friends. I wish that Tahoma would be able to remember a selection. Or maybe there's something I don't know that Darren knows about that. But it would be really great if you could return to a selection, but I don't think you can. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, watch this. We'll see if it backfires, but I'm going to give it a try. Now what I'm going to do is take a hold of this bit here. And try to flatten that out a bit, like so. Yeah, that's better. Okay, keep moving forward. B key, boom, boom. Whoops, that's not what I want to do. I'm just trying to make these big... It's like you might as well just do this big sweeping motion and hope you get it. This doesn't matter because it's off screen. The camera doesn't see it. So if I'm off on the, if I get to the end of the line and it's off, it doesn't matter because you're never going to see that. But boom, boom. And then we got this. I might as well just suffer through this tedium. And another thing you could do is just draw the contour line and say, well, okay, if that's good enough, let's go Control C, Control V, and just offset it. That would probably be the smarter way to work. So there you go. There you go. And then just go in and let's go ahead and try this again. Let's hit the E key And let's go to segment mode and see what happens. And in this case, it worked pretty well. So, if it works, right? E key, same situation there. Well, actually, oh, and Tahoma just blew up. Darn you, Tahoma. Okay, so now, you guys, if you ever wonder why I'm a little cynical or a little dubious of all the exciting new features that everybody on YouTube and all across the internet are getting all titillated about with new software releases, this is why. Because the segment eraser is a relatively new addition to Tahoma, and look what it just did to me. Doggone it. And I think I lost a bunch of work just now, too. That is not cool. Tahoma, you suck. You suck in such a big way. Yep, I just lost a ton of work, guys. Yeah, that's not cool. Well, yep, there you go. Save your work. Every single little tiny, incy-weensy, itty-bitty step you take, save your work, because guess what? Your tools, they're going to let you down in a big, 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 big way. Never even think for a moment that you can rely on your tools to be reliable. Because you can't. Sorry. Hate to be cynical, but it's the truth. It boggles my mind sometimes how tools can suck so bad. And it's not just, look at that, even the paint that I filled in here. Well, yep, that's what I get. This is where the cynical part of me really comes out, because I say things like, that's what I get for enjoying myself. That's what I get for actually getting lost in the process and having fun. Because what happens? Do all the work over. This is actually, I tell you the truth, guys, nothing causes me to get, like, if I ever want to just like quit and say forget it, I quit this whole stupid animation thing. This is the type of thing that makes me want to do it. It's when you work and work and work, and then you know, the software blows up and you like, okay, now I have to do all that over, and I am not motivated to do the same work twice. If I screw it up and I have to redo it because I need to make it better, that's one thing. That I can deal with. That's on me. But man, it pisses me off when I have to completely redo a bunch of work because, you know, I know why. Because of a counting problem. That's what just happened. Tahoma didn't do a good job of counting, you know, of keeping track of its own data, and so there it is. Does Adobe Animate any better? I don't know. I have no idea. But yeah, sucks. A backup file? Well, I don't usually use, in recent days, I do not use autosave. Why? Because have you ever saved your project in Tahoma? You have to sit there for, like, Tahoma's saving is really punitive. Okay? So now I could see having like, let's do yeah, and you have to save everything. If you don't save everything, if you don't save the non-scene files, it doesn't do you any good, because it's the images that you're trying to save. You know? So okay, we'll try it. We'll go with every 5 minutes. So the basic idea is that that's protecting you against the cardinal sin. What's the cardinal sin? Having so much fun doing what you're doing that you just allow yourself to get lost in the work and you forget to save, you know, because you're just cranking along. Tell you guys, that is, I know it sounds terribly cynical, but it really is the cardinal sin. So one thing you must never do, never actually have fun. Isn't that terrible? It's a terrible thing to say. You poor, sad, sad man. How could you be so miserable in life?
How can you look at life so cynically? Why, it's absolutely tragic. Tragic, I say.
And it's not just Tahoma. I've never seen it fail. I remember when I was in college. You guys won't have a hard time believing that. When I was in college, I was in an audio production class, and I was producing a radio jingle. Right, that was what I wanted to do for this one project for the course. But to do what I was doing at the time I was doing it, I actually had cobbled together like half a dozen synthesizers with a hardware-based sequencer, a Yamaha sequencer, as I recall. And I was let's just say I was pushing the equipment much harder than most people push the equipment, right? I had a lot of tools that were all daisy chained together and being made to work, and it was working. The problem was that the Yamaha sequencer, even though it was a hardware device, you'd buy it at a music store. It was like a $350 item, as I recall back then. This would have been around 1988. And yes, Virginia, believe it or not, hardware devices that are completely packaged, standalone. In other words, there's no computer. There were no computers back then, at least not as far as PCs, for the most part. I mean, there kind of were, but this was the early days of DOS. And yeah, these hardware devices would be released with buggy operating systems, buggy software. And so I would work for like 45 minutes or an hour and a half, and then all that work would be lost for that hour and a half. And there was no safety backup. There was no way to protect against it. You had to just hope the tool didn't crash. That's all you could do. And you would sort of learn, you would sort of come to realize certain workflows that tended not to make it crash versus the ones that did. But boy, it was a miserable experience. I remember one time after reams and reams and reams of work, and it was like you're like 5% away from having it done. It's like, oh, and this is so cool, right? And then sure enough. Now the only good news was when that happens, you tend to be able to reproduce the work that you lost a lot faster than it took to do it the first time. So there's that. There is that to consider. But man, I don't know about this though. In this case, you're talking about ink. I don't think there's really a way to ink faster. I just don't think there is. So, yeah, that's pretty disappointing. I don't know how much work I lost right there, but it had to be at least 20 minutes or so, I'm sure. And of course, now that I've been burned, I'll be saving even though I have autosave turned on. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm actually going to cheat this particular drawing a little bit by going here, hitting the B key, and well, actually I don't even need to do that. I can just make a duplicate. That's better. Okay, so now I'm going to go select all, Shift Alt, and Tahoma just blew up again. Oh my. Oh my God. This is where people in the will start chiming in with, download the latest version, you know. Like I'm using a version of Tahoma that I've used for months and 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 months. So you say, whoa, well, geez, Dave, what changed? I'll show you what changed. What changed was this. This is what changed. I have not done this a ton, but what I'm doing is I'm hitting Shift Alt and going to scale this. So, and this time it didn't crash it. So go figure. I don't get it, people. I don't get it. But there it is. Okay, boom. You might want to grab the right brush there, fella. Okay. S key, grab that. Control C, Control V. There's that. B key. Okay. Accidentally hit my middle mouse button on my stylus. Curve this around, zoom in. B key. There we go. Alright. Save our work. Eraser. Segment mode. Let's try it. Yes! Nice jobs. Tahoma. When you're good, you're good. Now that didn't quite work out so successfully, but and this will not erase no matter what I do, so that's interesting. My goodness. Shift Alt R to reset my screen, which by the way is not a default hotkey. And I'm just going to go like that, like that, like that. We'll redo that last one, like that. Eraser. I'm not going to bother with the segment eraser. I'm just going to clean it up. But frankly, for these types of big lines that need to be straight or accurate, it's probably better to just draw the big whipped out line and then use the eraser to clean it up. So, okay, hey Blifton, you're illustrating exactly what I was talking about yesterday about everyone was like it only crashed like once or twice or no. I know. You can't, I mean, what are you going to do? You know, what can you do? There's nothing you can do. Except save your work, save early, save often, as I often say. But then I have to qualify that with, yeah, do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. But this whole approach actually to drawing, where you're, and by the way, I want to redo this line, but this idea that you're sort of, you know, drawing these fairly large lines that you're then coming back around and cleaning up. It's really not a bad way to work, especially if you're churning through a lot of work. Now in this case, I really kind of need to size that up a bit. B key. And then you just have to go back and clean it up a bit. Boom. Okay, let's see if I can do this freehand. Close. That's close. Close, but no cigar. Well, the problem is, you know, I'm right-handed. If you want to do that, you really need to do this. I would say you really need to just rotate your screen, friends. Don't be a fool. Rotate your screen. Shift Alt R, which by the way, if you want to use that hotkey, you got to set it up yourself because it's not a default. It is not. Okay, what do we got? Not bad, not bad. But and again, going back to the Futurama thing, the reason I'm sort of toying with something that's really a lot of frame by frame animation is that frame by frame animation is the one thing I do here that is totally software agnostic. You know, what I'm doing right now you could do in Blender, Krita, Tahoma. It doesn't matter because I'm not using any tools that are unique, you know, to the digital experience of using those softwares. Okay, so I'm going to try to be quick about this. Boom. Yeah. That's another reason I like to move fast, too. It isn't because I'm in a hurry so much as I want to... Two things. One is I want to not forget the image that's in my mind's eye as I'm working, right? That's why I like to flip. But, what's the other reason? I like to just get the idea out and then come back later and reevaluate it, see if I, did I do as well as I thought I did, or, maybe it needs a little work. Okay, so, boom. Okay, that worked. Boom. Boom. That'll be fine. Boom. Boom. Okay, not bad. It seems like, I guess I would say, if there's a lesson here, folks, it would be, don't be afraid to practice doing what I just did. Because the more you draw these big long lines and allow your whole arm to move, you'll get better at it. Chewing my other olive, by the way. I hope you good people will forgive me for chewing an olive in your ear. Okay, Golik. Give us a big smile. Not bad. But not good enough. That's better. Yes, that is better. Now somebody else will rewind the video and they'll look at it and go, Dave, actually that was like the exact same line. It could be. It could be the case. So, 10 concurrent viewers. Holy smokes. Well, listen, since I got 10 people here watching, I'm going to take the opportunity right now to encourage everybody to be here on Saturday morning when I do the interview with Ed Hooks. And if you're like, what the heck are you even talking about? It's this guy who is the author of this book, Acting for Animators. This is a little conversation we had. Or actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a break. I'm going to actually rerun this. I'm going to take a break, and this runs about 4 minutes. So I'm going to just rewind this and let you guys enjoy the preview. And so I can take a short break. I hope you guys don't mind. And I hope you don't mind if those of you who were here before sitting through the preview. So I'll be back in about 4 minutes.
Animators, they're 24 frames make a second. An animator has an illusion of real time. They don't work in real time. Therefore, animators really do not need to be trained as actors, but they do need to understand acting structure, acting theory, scene structure. And that's what I teach, and is that. It goes all the way back to Aristotle. With animation, you think first about physical movement. Actors are trained not to think about physical movement. If you think about physical movement when you're playing a scene, it's considered an acting error. When you're making an animation, when you're creating it, when you're writing one, putting it together, telling a story, your audience wants to look at every single sequence as a problem to be solved. And how is the character solving that particular problem in that particular moment? And so when you're animating and you want to give good performance, the challenge for me as an acting teacher is that animation, since Walt Disney's days, has been taught through a process of mentorship, and where you get experienced animators basically telling the new generation, this is how you do it. Mm-hmm. And, if you want a character to be really excited, do this with the eyebrows. You've heard this.
Well, I tell you, based on everything you're saying, the animator is a director. And that's actually what they're really trying to learn to be, is a director.
You're exactly right. And this is what all of your early, those were really animation directors, animator directors, the ones that did the Bugs Bunny and all of those guys. They gave birth to those characters and owned them, and they animated a character straight through, beginning to end. It was their character,
Right.
and they got to be like it was. They knew exactly what the character was going to do, and so what you're doing as an animator is you're really helping your character be a good actor. From the audience's perspective, Mickey Mouse is the actor, not Walt Disney. It's
now you're almost suggesting there's sort of this intermediate step then between I as the animator have this role of the director, but then really what I'm doing is I'm portraying the character as an actor. You're almost putting an intermediate step between the performance of a character that I'm becoming emotionally on board with and my role as a director. You're saying the audience is aware of that middle step where the character is actually an actor.
Yeah, in order to really understand this, I don't think that there's enough focus on the relationship between the animator and the audience. Animators tend to get really involved with the technical aspects of animating and to make a character seem to come alive. And I agree, it's almost a magic trick. I stand in awe of some of the animators that I've worked with. I just am in awe of what they can do. But there's not enough focus on the aesthetic.
On and on and on and on and on it goes. And I'm going to turn this off now.
And in order to get it,
that's going to fade out. So that was a bit of a clunky, did a clunky job right there. So sorry about that. But anyway, so who's the one who hasn't pressed the like button yet? Am I missing something here? What is that referring to? I just don't know what that even means. Got to turn the light on. Okay, I'm not going to go too much longer, but I will post a I'm going to post an announcement in the community thing here on YouTube and on Discord tomorrow for that interview, because all we saw just now was that was a preview. That was me getting a hold of Ed and saying, hey, let's test the Zoom call and make sure everything's going to work. And then we wound up chatting for an hour. So, neat guy. I like Ed. He's a good man with quite an interesting career, an interesting niche in, obviously training animators about acting. So, and I'm thinking maybe I'll put a link in the announcement so that if people have specific questions, I know some of you guys have posted some stuff on Discord or whatever, but if you have specific questions that he could answer, then you might want to post those on Discord or something. And it's kind of a cool opportunity. I mean, you're talking about the author of a fairly seminal book in the world of animation. The first edition of Acting for Animators came out 20 years ago. 20 freaking years ago, friends. And he's not really, pitching the new edition of the book either, because he's actually working on it. And I think he said I think he's going to get it to the publisher in June, but it won't actually be out for like a year or something. I mean, it's kind of a ways out from being released. So, nope, he's just really doing me a favor by coming on to talk to you guys about whatever it is you're trying to do in the animation space, where you think maybe some knowledge of acting and that perspective of a very experienced acting teacher who's worked with tons of animators, where that perspective might be useful. So, there you go. Should be fun. Okay, got it. Yeah, and it's gonna be posted on the YouTube. I mean, it's no big deal, people. If you can't be here for the live stream, that's fine. You know, and really, I got a taste of it today. It's one of those things where I know we're gonna have a fun conversation, and he's probably gonna say some things that make me think about my role as a director. You know, as I said early in the live stream tonight, this came up in the conversation today is that when you're doing what I'm doing here, where I'm actually playing the role of the director and all the actors and the editor, it's probably easier for me than for some people, because I just naturally think of it as a director and as an editor. You know, the pacing of how it goes from cut to cut, you know, and whether it's a close-up or a wide shot, and the pace at which those change, you know, that's stuff I'm thinking about all the time. Okay. I'm feeling pretty good about this so far. Let's hit rewind. And by the way, let's save our work. Do you recommend the book, Dave? Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I read it through. As I mentioned in the live stream the other day, I read the book. You know, if you don't understand how a knowledge of acting and to think about how to put this, the perspective that we as creators, which we happen to be animators, but the perspective that we bring to the work that we're doing, if you don't buy into the idea that it is your role to be a director, and you're thinking of the characters you're drawing as actors that have a role to play, if you don't think of it that way, then you're not going to be as fixated on the craft of acting. Like, I think about the craft of acting the same way I look at the craft of drawing or creating music or any of that kind of stuff. To me, it's a very interesting craft. It's something that I had to learn and understand in order to direct actors, you know, on a movie set. You know, in order to do my job, I had to be able to speak the language of the actors and explain things in a way that was meaningful to them, that they could wrap their head around, so that they could get the performance that we were after, you know. So my point is that if you don't, if that's like completely Greek to you and not even interesting or something, then you probably wouldn't enjoy the book as much. But you kind of have to care about the acting craft in order to get the most out of it. When I first read the book, I did not know if I could recommend the book. Okay, that's the truth. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, because it was a windy path where somehow, you know, I was doing some work researching like who I'd want to maybe talk to about what I'm doing here on Salt and Light, because it's unique. You know, it's one guy creating this show, right? Pretty unusual. And somehow, I have no idea now, but somehow I came across Ed and his book, and I contacted him, and we just had a bunch of exchanges, and so I kind of made friends with the guy before I actually knew for sure that I could recommend his book. So that's the point I'm getting around to in a very long-winded way. But I read the book. I've read it almost twice now. I'm almost done the second time through. And I would say that for most animators, it would be a useful book to have on your shelf. If only because it helps you to understand the fundamentals of the acting craft from the vantage point of both a director. In other words, you're someone you're the judge looking at the performance, deciding if it's doing the job that it needs to do. And also from the vantage point of an animator. I think that's basically what makes Ed's perspective somewhat unique in the industry, is that he's targeting that message to animators. Because he's fundamentally an acting teacher. I mean, he was an acting teacher for 20 years before he ever wrote the book. Just for your I think I told the story a few days ago, but the long story short is that when they made Ants, the movie Ants. So remember this movie? When they made this movie, Ed was a respected acting instructor, and he was called in to Pacific Data Images to just kind of consult with and coach, I guess, the CGI in it. Because you think about it, this was, Ants came out basically head-to-head with A Bug's Life. So everybody was doing bugs at the time, because in CGI at that time, hair and skin hadn't quite gotten where they needed to be. So rigid body creatures like bugs made a lot of sense, right? Same with Toy Story, being toys. They're essentially rigid, So, point being that at that time, I think it's fair to say that there were a lot of people that were involved early with CGI who really didn't necessarily have either the background with acting. They were probably more technicians than performers on the one hand, and on the other hand, there's sort of like acting idioms you see coming up over and over again in CGI movies. Which I've kind of made the comment that they all kind of look alike to me nowadays, because a lot of the acting looks like basically an imitation of what worked well in the early Pixar movies, and then that sort of became a standard. Well, none of that existed back then. This would have been, I don't know, I think it was it was like 99 or something. It was the late 90s. I think it was pre-2000. I'm not sure of that, but so I think that's kind of the story behind that is here's a guy that's an acting instructor out in LA who's the company that's making the CGI movies calling him in to saying, "Hey, help our people understand, so we can get good performances out of these digital characters we're creating." I think that's pretty much what happened. How that dovetailed into writing a book, I'm not quite sure. So I guess somebody might want to ask him that if they're interested. But, hey, Soda Pop, do you think you'll be animating Salt and Light differently after reading the book and the insights? Well, we'll see. Obviously just today, we've got me fiddling around with 12 frame per second animation here. Just because I am thinking about acting. I am thinking about the performance and how some of the things I'm thinking about. For me, I'm a little different probably than most of you guys because I've directed 8 feature films, right? Full-length movies. So I've been around the block probably more than you guys have as far as dealing with the craft of acting. And I've done it from the vantage point of an actor. So the truth is, not to be a know-it-all, but there's not much I'm getting out of Ed's book that I didn't personally already know and have put into practice. But there are a few things that are fresh insights from a different perspective that I hadn't thought about before. And as I kind of started to say, as I so often do and didn't finish my sentence, the second time through, I'm going a little slower, and I'm definitely getting some good things out of it the second time that I missed the first time. So, yeah. The short answer is I think probably any animator would benefit from reading it, whether you own it or not. I actually went and got a copy at my library because I was in a hurry. I was in a hurry to read it before I talked to the guy, and they happened to have it on the shelf. So I'm like, okay. So I hopped in the car and went downtown and got it from the library. This is coming along. I really actually like quite well the way this final segment is shaping up. If that feels pretty good, I'm feeling like I did a good job on the tweening and whatnot. I do think, however, that I really would like to see. That little line right there. I'm kind of missing that. Whoops, that was not quite right. So anyway. Now, unfortunately, I got to do this. I need to go select, Control C, go back one image, and go S, Control V. Because there's no way I'll put that line in the same place twice. So, animating Salt and Light differently after reading the book? Probably not. Because it's not really about... It's really not about animation technique. It's truly about acting. It's just acting from a vantage point that's targeting the needs of animators. What do animators need to know in order to deliver good performances? Well, you're going to think about the things that an actor would want to know to deliver a good performance, right? It's really no different, except it's a little different. And even in that little preview, the preview gave a little taste of what the difference is. The difference is that an actor, number one, an actor can practice the performance in real time with real people, number one. An animator can't do that. So we have a cost or a risk in our work that a live actor doesn't have. In that, we may have to spend many, many hours on a shot only then to know whether it really worked or not. Right? So is it a fair premise to say that the more we know about acting, the better our odds of doing that successfully, so it doesn't turn out to be either wasted effort or disappointing effort? I would say, yeah, that's probably fair. Yes. No, it is not about animation per se. It's literally what the book title is, Acting for Animators. It is about acting. But based on, now many years of coaching animators to help them understand acting so that they get better performances out of their characters. The thing that I found really interesting in our conversation today, which was, again, just a little practice conversation to make sure the Zoom call worked, was this idea that Ed posits that the character that plays, like this is Golik, okay? And I haven't totally wrapped my head around this either, and I'm not sure that I totally agree with it. But the one thing he said today that was kind of interesting was that effectively you as the audience are aware of this guy as an actor, as opposed to this guy as the character in the show. Like, you're aware of that. And I think that the reason he said that, he maybe didn't explain it as clearly as what I think he meant, but what I think he meant by that is that there's a contract between us and the audience where they willingly suspend their disbelief in order to enjoy a story. So we all understand that it's a story. We all understand that Golik is not real. Right? And so then as actors or as directors or as animators, in which we are all three, how can we do a good job when the audience takes that risk and enters into that contract with us where they're willing to suspend their disbelief, and their expectation of us is that we're going to fulfill the expectation of entertaining them? Well, you want to do a good job of that, right? Well, the premise, obviously, is that the more you know about the acting craft, the more likely you're going to do a good job of satisfying that expectation and fulfilling that contract, as it were. And it doesn't matter the format. That can be a 30-second Twitch video, or not Twitch, TikTok. It can be a 30-second. It doesn't really matter what the format is. It can be a full-length movie, or it can be a 30-second. There's still there's storytelling and there's acting, and another thing we want to do is if you're thinking about about animation from sort of a Disney animation perspective, you probably think about trying to pack as much density of information and emotion and into what might be a very, very short performance, right? A given shot, let's say. So one of the little tug of wars about that is, well, if you're dealing with something like what I'm working on here, where this is limited animation, I'm not going to do as much acting. Well, what do you do then? A lot of it is, it's still informative to understand acting, though, because now, and by the way, I'm not, just so you know, I'm not getting a cut on selling his book or anything like that, okay? So there's nothing like that. But when you think about a performance from the vantage point of a director, you're asking yourself, what is the essential, most important thing that we're going to maybe communicate to the audience, right? Like for example, why do we have Golek kind of push in like this when he smiles? You know, what does that say to the audience? How does that make us feel, right? And if you're creating something that is really short or has to be done economically, then you're more likely to want to really think about not necessarily packing as much information into that performance, but rather doing the opposite. And he does talk about that in the book, is the acting craft, a lot of it is actually stripping away everything except the essentials that are critical to the story you're trying to tell. And that is something, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of talking it out loud here, but that's something that's dealt with very specifically in the book, is this idea of stripping it away to the bare bones, and then you sort of build a performance back up. And I think for you guys, the more you think about that, you know, if what you're thinking about is, you know, how do I draw a shape and have it go from this side of the screen to that side of the screen? You know, you want to get way past that and be thinking not about those technical or mechanical things. You want to be thinking about storytelling, making people laugh, making people feel something, right? That's what you want to think about, and that's where understanding some things about the acting craft may help you. So, a long-winded answer, and it's so unlike me to be long-winded. I know, it's like totally shocking, isn't it? But there it is. So I think with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm starting to run out of gas here, folks. So I guess we'll turn on some beautiful music in the background from the Salt and Light as we enter a sad moment here. Wow. Amar's got some comments here. From my limited experience, doing theater the same show each night is not easy. Improv is a lot easier. Brother does improv, it's deceptive because it looks easy really. Oh no, improv is not easy. When I was directing my most successful film, Healed by Grace, I remember I was getting into a discussion with Tommy Beardmore, who had a prominent role in the movie. I think it was Tommy who shared this with me, but one thing they do in improv is, if you're doing a back and forth with another actor, what you do is, it doesn't matter what they say, you always respond to what they say with yes and. Right? So the first guy says, my pet gerbil died. And I say, yes, and he was wonderful with ketchup and mustard. Right? So that becomes a really simple tool for improv. And this gets back to the acting craft. The more you know, the more you can pull little tools like that out of your tool belt and use them to spark new ideas. The thing I just said about the gerbil, I just made that up off the top of my head. But that's a good example of improv, you know. Person number one starts us out by saying my gerbil died, and now you have to say yes and then follow it up with something else. So the creativity was in real time, immediately saying to myself, yes, and he was, you know, he tasted delicious or something like that, right? Right. Then the next person says, yes, and I spent 2 hours on the toilet the next morning, you know. And then the next person says, yes, and we completely destroyed the porcelain with the Roto-Rooter thing we had to use to try to clean out the toilet. Okay, so anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the music. Hope you enjoyed the animation. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. It's been a lot of fun, but I am ready to quit. But I'll post something on Discord and YouTube about the interview. And with that, I shall say, my good friends, there will be more later.